As, uh, as Patrick said, my name is Ted. So it should come as no surprise that I'm giving you a TED Talk. Right? Um, but when I really thought about this, my story actually begins way before I was born. And it starts actually with Hiroshima, post-war Japan. And my parents, they wanted a better life, and they went to America, and they wanted to be integrated with America. So by the time their second child came along, which was me, they said, we want to speak only in English with him. And so I learned English really well, right? But I didn't learn a lick of Japanese. So then when the chance came finally to reconnect with Japan, I thought that would be great. And because every day I was reminded that I was Japanese. And I remember on Kodomo no Hi, I remember my soaring feeling and feeling really proud, despite being in the 98% white neighborhood. I remember just feeling so proud to be Japanese. And so my company said, hey, you're Japanese? I said, I am. And they said, okay, great. We have a great marketing role. You can lead marketing up for us in Japan. And so I said, that's great. And there was only one issue, though, is that when I came, no Japanese thought I was Japanese. I felt not included. And so I really thought about this, and I said, you know what? I have a special superpower. And my superpower is, if I just don't talk, I can just fade into being just another Japanese. So I remember, actually, I was riding the Shinkansen, and then this old lady heard all these fluent English speakers going and talking, and she's like turning around in her seat, and she's looking for who is that foreigner who's speaking fluent Japanese, fluent English. And she could just see a sea of Japanese, and I just went silent. And then she went away. But then I said, you know what? This doesn't really work. I'm just going to focus on my work. And so we were managed to turn around a troubling digital phone company, Kansai Digital Phone, and we went from number 4 to number 2 in our marketplace. Hard work, sincere work. And then the corporate headquarters called and they said, you know what? You guys did a great job. We want you to come to our global competition. There's 12 teams. And there were 10 American teams and an EU team. And the Japanese team, we really tried hard. And we actually got the #1 prize. So you know what? The Americans were like, yeah, high fives, that's great. And my Japanese team was shocked and disappointed. They were shocked and disappointed. And what for me was the career highlight until that time, I was not understanding this. I went completely dark. And I said, you know what? I have a crisis now because I really don't understand Japan. What is being Japanese, right? And so I asked a bunch of Japanese friends of mine, what is Japanese? And there's a bunch of different ideas that came out, right? And for me, this is more of the surface, right? This is something that describes Japanese, but it's not getting to the essence of Japanese. So then I thought to myself, there must be words that can describe this, right? So every language has words that cannot be translated very well, right? The French have voila, right? And the Italians, they don't even have a word. They're just like this, right? Right? And so I thought, what are those words in Japanese? They're surely not kimono, right? That's Japanese, and it's only Japanese, but it doesn't describe what Japanese is. So then I thought, okay, so there's four words I came up with, which I call the pillars of being Japanese, right? So one of them is noko minzoku, okay? So Japanese, 95% of Japanese came up growing up on a farm, and it's very much planning, and we're very steady, hardworking, conservative. This is the base root of Japanese. And then you think about the Meiji Revolution that came in, and they talked about more about the samurai spirit of Kanpeki Shugi, and detailed, and then thinking about being attentive to things. And this is very, very different. It's very important to realize, of course, the Germans are very Kanpeki. They're very perfectionistic, but they're perfectionistic in order to get a result of being efficient. The Japanese are the only culture that I know of that are being perfect to be perfect, right? It's no other reason. It has no result. They just want to be perfect, right? But the third pillar is soncho. So having respect for your elders, respect for others, and really respect for nature. So it's very much part of Shinto religion that says that we're part of nature. So this is the third pillar. And the fourth pillar is wa. And so prioritizing others, thinking of the other first before thinking of yourself, and thinking inside and outside. And a lot of confusion exists because a lot of times Americans like, that wasn't very WA, but that's because they were outside the WA. And it only applies for inside the WA. So all these four pillars, you put them together, and it provides a framework for understanding Japanese. And if we think about all those concepts, they actually all fit into being part of Japanese. So, and they all fit perfectly in this. So first of all, we have to think one by one of these, and we think about we can think about soncho or kanpeki, each one of these. Let's think about one example that most foreigners have seen. Is they say, you know what, Japanese are so considerate. I couldn't believe that they had 20 minutes they went out of their way to go and take me to a station. That was great. And the same person said, but you know what? I had another one that said, no English, no English, and they ran away. So what is behind that? If you think like an American, you're thinking, is that polite? They don't seem polite. Some people are polite and some people are not. So that's not the right way, the framework to think about it. The framework is kanpeki shugi, right? The Japanese who ran away, oh, I'm not worthy, my English is not good, I have to run off, right? And then the other person who's like, you know, I can really try, I'm gonna be as perfect as I can, right? So let's think about each one of these as we go along. The Kantai experience, so what was going on there? So in the upper left, you see the Americans were putting on a show. Americans are great at putting on the show, right? They have the dance and the singing and all this stuff. And the Japanese were like, our English is no good. And although, you know, what are we gonna do? We have not practiced and we're not dancing. And so they said, if it's kanpeki shugi, they thought, okay, that doesn't really hit because it's not kanpeki. And the next one is soncho, it applied, but they were really respectful of the American teams. They're like, oh, those Americans are our senpai, they're doing so well. And when they thought about soncho, they're like, we can't respect ourselves, but we're respecting the Americans more, and this doesn't work. And the final one is WA, and on WA they were thinking there's 12 teams, 10 of them are American, and the year before an EU team won. And they're thinking, how could a Japanese team win this year? That disrupts the whole spirit of WA, because in Japan that wouldn't happen, that you wouldn't have 2 foreign teams win 2 years in a row. So they were thinking about it in this way, and it didn't work again, so WA dropped out. The one thing that did work is no-ko minzoku, and yeah, we worked hard, but that entered, but that's not enough for them to feel really good about that. And if I could say one thing to that team at that time is, you know what, Americans are judging you by a completely different standard. They judge on results, and our results were #1 by far. We went from #4 to #2. Be proud of that, right? And the other thing is they're looking at your sincerity. They look at you on the stage and they're saying, they're really trying hard. Their English is so bad, but it's okay, you're trying. And you know what? That's what I want to say to Japanese who don't feel perfect enough and their English is bad. Don't worry about that, just try, right? Just don't worry about it. Don't be kanpeki about it, right? So the next thing is can this explain, the 4 pillars can explain other more complex topics? So for example, we have Bushido. So Bushido is simply perfection of respect, kanpeki and soncho, right? And if we think about tatemae and hone, this has a lot of, this is difficult for a lot of Americans. This is the whole concept of trying to hold back your true opinions because you don't want to insult the person. Oh, that's a really bad tie, right? Or you don't want to say your true opinion. You want to hold back on it because you're respecting the other and you're trying to have a spirit of wa, right? And so this is really good. And this is, the Americans have troubles with this a lot of times because they think they're always speaking hone, but Americans actually have this as well in the culture. And you know what it's called? It's called the elephant in the room. Okay, it's the one thing that everyone knows. They can see a big elephant, but nobody wants to say anything. That's called tatemae for Americans. So Americans actually have this too. Then you can think about other concepts like the ochakai. And so ochakai is simply perfection of wa, right? It's all the perfect movements as you pass your teacup from person to person, and you really feel this perfect harmony. And then you also have Hatsumode. And Hatsumode, the New Year celebration, is kind of a combination of all the 4 pillars, right? Every year you have your traditions. And I think this is at the very, very center of the 4 pillars, you have rules and processes, and this is really respected in Japan like no other culture, right? Rules are protected, right? And when you think about that, the process becomes shukan. We think about habits, and we think about what does this mean for business too. A lot of businessmen ask me, hey, how do I change my company? How do we improve things, right? And so we can think about that too. So if we think about our cultural keys, sometimes instead of the farming culture, we have to think about the hunting culture. We have to think about being perfect, be agile, be flexible, right? If we're thinking about soncho and respect, instead of respecting the past or respecting your elder, respect results in the future. Instead of saying wa, think about frontier spirit. And actually these four things, they describe American culture. And this is no doubt one reason why America is so successful in Silicon Valley and starting new things. But Japan cannot emulate and just copy Americans. That's not the right way to approach it. That doesn't work for Americans trying to be Japanese either. So what it has to do is you have to think about the Japanese are really, really good at process. So just like they happened in the Meiji Revolution and just like post-war Japan, they took processes from abroad and they were able to apply that to improve. So Japan has to think about the same way. So in short, you can think I'm American and I'm Japanese. And if you put the two together, it could be a banana, which is yellow on the outside and white on the inside. That's a simple explanation. But you know what? I think I'm something far more. I have special ingredients. And in thinking about the special ingredients, which are, and a special recipe, which is the 4 pillars, I think I've been able to kind of create a banana cream pie. Right? So something a little bit different, right? And so identity crisis is resolved. Thank you for listening to my 4 keys to being Japanese, and it's just a talk by TED. Thank you.